Well, we begin our coverage this morning in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where the defense has rested its case in the Kyle Rittenhouse homicide trial after 8 days of dramatic and at times emotional testimony.
Rittenhouse faces 6 charges, including intentional homicide, after shooting 3 men during a protest last year. With closing arguments now set for Monday, the prosecution is requesting that the jury also consider lesser charges. NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from Kenosha. Megan, good morning to you. So we've seen dramatic testimony this week, including from Rittenhouse, who took the stand, plus some heated exchanges between the judge and the prosecution. So what should we know about the 8th and final day of testimony?
Well, Joe, good morning. I can tell you it certainly wasn't as contentious as what we've seen just days ago on Wednesday. But the defense started by calling Dr. John Black. This is a self-defense expert, also a video specialist. And what the defense did is they walked the jury frame by frame of this video, honing into the timeline and the specific moments when Rittenhouse pulled the trigger, trying to show that it was a split-second decision in self-defense. Then, at the end of the day, they heard from Drew Hernandez. This is a man who took video that night, posting it to social media. He testified, really bolstering, the defense's claim that this was self-defense and that he came to this protest to try and help people and to render aid. He even testified that he saw Rittenhouse de-escalate a situation. Then, of course, the defense rested its case. Evidence closed in this case. Jurors were sent home. They'll return back on Monday for closing arguments and then, of course, deliberations, Joe.
So, Megan, Rittenhouse's mother, Wendy, broke her silence last night, appearing on Sean Hannity's show. We saw how emotional she was when her son testified earlier this week. What did she have to say last night?
Well, you know, she came to her son's defense. She said that he did act in self-defense and that he came to those protests wanting to try and help people. And then she became emotional. I want you to listen to this exchange with Hannity.
When I look at that video with that guy pointing a gun to my son's head, I thought he was going to die. I'm grateful and I'm relieved that he's okay, but he has a lot of healing to do because he does have nightmares from this.
She is hopeful that her son will not be convicted, and she also says that she believes that the judge in this case is fair. Joe.
Now, Megan, as we mentioned, the prosecution is now asking for the jury to consider lesser charges just days before closing arguments. So what are those charges, and what does this say about the prosecution strategy at this late hour?
Well, it certainly suggests that the prosecution could be a bit concerned about their case, concerned that they will not be able to get a conviction on the highest charges here. So we know that when they come to court this morning, 10 o'clock local time, they will be discussing this along with jury instructions, and we will get a better idea of exactly what the prosecution is hoping to do moving forward. Joe.
And Megan, we also know things have been tense in Kenosha since last year. We all remember these shootings happened during protests over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. How is the city preparing for the verdict, either way, in Rittenhouse's trial?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department just released a statement yesterday saying that they have been watching closely this trial here, and they are prepared in the event that there are protests. Now, of course, worth noting that so far things have been calm, with the exception of a person or two. We really haven't seen many protesters out here. So at this moment, it seems that, you know, there's no concern at the moment. But again, the Sheriff's Department here saying that they are ready either way.
All right, much more to come on Monday. Megan, thank you so much.
Now to breaking news overnight. 14-year-old New Jersey girl Jashya Moore, missing for nearly a month, has been found safe. The teen was located yesterday in New York City, with details surrounding her disappearance still very much a mystery this morning. WNBC reporter Tracy Strahan is at the Essex County Veterans Courthouse in Newark. Good morning, Tracy. A lot of relief for her family and the community that Jashya was found safe. What more can you tell us about how she's doing this morning and anything you know about how she was found?
Well, the prosecutor's office is simply saying she was found at a shelter in New York City last night and received what they call the appropriate services. This is a 14-year-old girl from East Orange, New Jersey, who's been missing since October 14th. And while there's a lot of relief within the community about her being found, there are also a lot of questions. She was last seen at a deli in East Orange, and police leading the investigation into her disappearance saw on surveillance video that she was with an older man who paid for her items on the night that she was last seen. Now, another question to be answered. Authorities are saying the night she disappeared, Jashya Moore's mother initially reported her as a missing person, saying that she was possibly a runaway. Her mother is now disputing that and saying her daughter was being held against her will. She was convinced that she had been kidnapped. Again, Jashya Moore is a high school freshman in East Orange, and there was a lot of concern about her case not receiving some of the same attention that other missing persons cases have received in recent months, really, in this area. The Essex County prosecutor is expected to hold a news conference later this morning, filling in some of the gaps into how she disappeared and really how she was discovered just last night, Vicki.
Yeah, you touched on it, Tracy. The case sparked a lot of frustration in the local community about the lack of coverage surrounding Jashya's disappearance, especially when compared to the attention of Gabby Petito's disappearance, for example. Can you tell us anything more about what you're hearing from the community or the family this morning?
Well, just being in East Orange a couple of days ago, people were demanding that the same attention be paid to her. And this is something that really gained traction via social media. That's when authorities got involved earlier this week. There was reward money involved in this as well. Anyone with any information that could lead to the safe return of Jashya Moore, they were offering $20,000 for that. At this point, however, we don't know if it was a tip that led authorities to her safe return or something more. We don't know if she was alone either. Again, the Essex County prosecutor saying this 14-year-old girl was found at a shelter in New York City, and this morning she's back in New Jersey.
Well, we are glad she is home safe. Tracy, thank you so much.
A federal appeals court has temporarily blocked the House committee investigating January 6 from obtaining former President Trump's White House records. A three-judge panel granted Trump's request to temporarily turn over the records. The committee was set to receive those documents as early as today. Lawmakers say they're critical to the investigation of the riot at the U.S. Capitol. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now. So, Leanne, this panel granted Trump an administrative injunction last night. What exactly does that mean, and what else did their orders say?
Good morning, Joe. The panel sure did, and that means that there's some more time for the former president to go through this appeals process. They gave him till November 30th for a hearing where a decision could be made. The court said that this is only a temporary delay, and they're aware of the accelerated timeline for this, and so they are trying to move this case through quickly, Joe.
So, Leanne, where does the select House committee go from here? Is there any other way to get their hands on these documents, or do they have to kind of go through this legal process with the arguments set for later this month?
Yeah, they have to go through this legal process. They are going to wait. Although the committee knows that this is an accelerated timeline, they know that this is moving relatively quickly. They thought today was going to be a big day that they were going to receive these documents because two lower courts did say that it could move forward. But this is part of the process, and this is also what the former president wants to do, is to slow down this process as much as possible, Joe.
Yeah, former President Trump is also hoping to block certain witnesses from testifying, including some that have already been subpoenaed, like former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. So what is Trump's argument here, and then what happens next with this part of the process?
Yeah, the former president thinks that that there's an executive privilege claim for his closest aides, and that's what they're arguing. And the latest dust-up is with his former Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who the committee has put some more pressure on him to start cooperating a lot more with the committee. The committee finally said late last night that they expect him to appear before the committee today. If he thinks he has an executive privilege claim, then Mark Meadows should come to the committee and say that today. So they did threaten another criminal contempt referral if Meadows does not show. So Meadows could be a very key player here, and then we could see the likes of what happened with Steve Bannon happen with Mark Meadows if he doesn't show, Joe.
So, Leanne, as the battle over witnesses and documents continues at times, the current president has been pulled into all of this. Have we heard anything from President Biden about this recently?
Yeah, well, he does speak about it every once in a while. He does say that it is up to the select committee and that there is no executive privilege claim. He is siding with the committee, and that is why he is allowing the release of these documents from the former president, from the archives, which we now know is caught up in the courts. And so while this is not front and center, he is saying that the committee has the right to pursue these investigations. Joe.
All right. Leanne Caldwell, thank you so much.
More than 100 kids ages 5 to 11 years old got the wrong COVID-19 vaccine dose at a pharmacy in Virginia. The mix-up left many parents worried about their kids. Officials now say that pharmacy is no longer allowed to administer doses to anyone. NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella explains what happened.
I asked her, I said, I thought it had to be orange. I thought the kids needed an orange cap Pfizer dose. I'm a parent, I'm not a pharmacist. I trusted her.
Jashya Moore is just one parent worried about her young daughter after a pharmacy in Loudoun County, Virginia, gave her the wrong COVID-19 vaccine dosage.
I'm very frustrated that we're not getting adequate guidance as to what we should do or the right information so that we can make the best decision for our family.
TED Pharmacy admitted to parents on social media splicing vaccine doses meant for people 12 years and older and administering them to children aged 5 to 11 years old. Vaccines for the older age group have a purple cap, while doses for the younger age group have an orange cap. Some of the children in Loudoun County were given a, quote, diluted dose of the vaccine meant for the older age group with the purple cap. This color coding is what made Jashya question the pharmacist who told her that it was okay. About 112 children were affected by the dose mix-up, according to the Virginia Department of Health. Another mom shared a screenshot of a Facebook message from TED Pharmacy with NBC News Washington. It said Pfizer told the pharmacy, quote, the dose is smaller than the dose from the orange cap pediatric vaccine and no need to worry about any adverse reactions or side effects. The Loudoun County Health Department sent a letter about the pharmacy's error. It read, quote, the pharmacy who administered the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccination to your child last week has been removed from both state and federal COVID-19 vaccination programs. The letter also said parents of affected children should check with their child's pediatrician on the best way to move forward.
The harm to the child, unfortunately, is unknown because this is not something that any trial would have set up to study. However, we know enough about that other dose of the vaccine to try to understand what to look for.
The Loudoun County Department of Health director confirmed that TED Pharmacy has given the rest of its COVID-19 vaccines to the health department.
And that was NBC's Heidi Presbella reporting.
In the courts and in communities across the country, the battle over vaccine mandates rages on, and one point of tension is the deadline, just over a week from now, for all federal employees to be fully vaccinated. Employees of federal contractors have until January to meet that requirement. That pressure is being felt from the corridors of Washington all the way to the rocket launch pads at Kennedy Space Center. NBC News correspondent Cal Perry joins us now from Cocoa Beach on Florida's Space Coast. So, Cal, good morning to you where you are. The space industry employs many federal workers and contractors, and I know you've been speaking to some who are protesting the vaccine mandate. What did they tell you?
Yeah, look, I think we often think of these space launches when we put humans onto the International Space Station like we have 2 days ago. But there's a launch this morning, Joe. They are launching almost bi-monthly SpaceX as they put satellites into space. So this is a booming industry, and there is a worker shortage that exists already in the U.S. That is what the federal lawsuit actually states, right? You have 10 states that are challenging this mandate in courts. And one of the things they're worried about is this worker shortage. We had a chance, as you said, to speak to some of the folks in the space industry. Take a listen.
We've had people out here who are vaccinated. It's not about just go and get the vaccine. It's about having the choice to get it. We're not an anti-vax group by any means. We're a pro-choice group. We have people out here who've gotten the vaccine. We support them getting the vaccine. We have no issues with them getting the vaccine, but it should be a choice.
And so there is this real tension that exists here on the ground. And when you talk about replacing some of these workers, it's not that simple. Sometimes you're talking about security clearances. That takes time. It is a concern for the employers. It is a concern for the employees, Joe.
So, Cal, in addition to those rules for federal workers, OSHA is also implementing new guidelines for any business that employs more than 100 workers, requiring either vaccination or that weekly testing. This is going to affect most workers in the U.S. You've been speaking to a restaurant owner there who's pushing back. What did he tell you?
And look, this is coming at a time when businesses are finally starting to come back, and you have all of these other problems. I asked him about all the problems that he's having and the timing of this. Take a listen. And how does it time out with the labor shortage, the supply chain crisis? It seems to be bad timing to have another issue on your hands.
I can't believe that that's not being considered, right? Again, I guess it's a fear, and there's a certain amount of scientific community saying this is the way to get out of this thing. So I'm not going to argue with them. I'm just here to tell you a reality that a lot of people are not going to get this. And to say that they have to be fired and they can't work, that's a big miss.
The other reality of this, frankly, is you're going to have business owners like the one you just heard from who is not going to mandate it, who will go through whatever testing system that the federal government requires. Again, this is being held up in the courts right now. We expect hopefully some ruling, obviously, before January 4th. But some of these businesses are just going to pay to test their employees rather than forcing that vaccine mandate, Joe.
So, Cal, not long ago, Florida, where you are, was considered a hot spot for COVID cases, perhaps the hot spot of the fourth wave. Now it's one of the states that's suing over these OSHA guidelines. Where do things stand with that suit?
Yeah, it's one of 10 states that is suing. It actually entered the court in Missouri. And again, what they're arguing is that this could exacerbate already a worker shortage. And as you said, Florida has been through, unfortunately, we hope, the worst of it. This is the state that has the third highest death toll in the nation after Texas and Florida. But now cases are very low. One of the reasons for that is the vaccine rates. And vaccine rates have gone way up since June. Just very quickly, I'll give you a statistic. Between 12 and 19-year-olds increased by 27%. By 20 and 29-year-olds by 18%. That is what epidemiologists want to see. They will point to that as making a huge difference, Joe.
All right. Cal, thanks so much.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Kavita Patel. She's a medical contributor for NBC News and MSNBC. Hey, good morning, Dr. Patel. As we head into the winter, COVID cases are climbing in 17 states. But this year, good news, right? We have more people vaccinated this winter. So do you think it will be as bad as the surge we saw last year? And what about folks who are vaccinated and they're worried about breakthrough infections? What should they do?
Yeah, Vicki, good morning to you and Joe. So number one, what we're learning about Delta and really the surges since last winter's surges is that America is not one nation in reaction to COVID. We're about 5 regions, and that's where you're seeing many states that are seeing increasing cases, but you're seeing states that are getting double-digit declines like mine in Maryland. So I think what this means for the winter is that we're going to continue to probably see kind of spikes and surges in waves in different parts of these regions, particularly dependent on vaccination rates in those regions, travel to and from, and that will make a big difference. If you're coming from an area with high cases and you go to an area with low cases, there's always a chance that that region can start to see more cases. Now, what that means for holidays, which is probably the most important thing for vaccinated individuals, even those who are worried about breakthrough infections, we're still seeing incredible protection with the vaccines. The breakthrough infections we're seeing, Vicki, we're finding in screening, which is helpful because we catch them before we even see symptoms, and we can try to isolate that individual to avoid any spread. So faith in your vaccine is going to help you through this winter. But I want to make sure that people, we're seeing, Vicki, not enough people who are eligible for the booster coming in. So 65 and older, it's time for a booster if it's been 6 months since the second dose. And 18 to 64, if you have a high-risk condition, that can include obesity, depression, a number of things that you might not be thinking of, you too need a booster. So I want to emphasize that that can play a role in helping to make sure that you have confidence in full immunity as we go into the winter.
Well, in Colorado, where cases are surging, Dr. Patel, sorry, I thought Joe was going to take a question. The governor actually signed in an executive order allowing all adults, regardless of age, to immediately qualify for a booster. So can we boost our way out of this surge? It sounds like you're saying absolutely people who are eligible should consider their booster. And also in those holiday gatherings, wearing masks indoors, I mean, do we need to take those mitigation measures again?
So I'll be brief, but one thing I want to stress with boosters is that I do believe that boosters make an incredible difference for, again, people over, and I would even kind of cut the age off at about 40 or 50 based on the data we see from the UK, Israel, and the United States. That can be an incredible age group. It's not 18 to 40-year-olds who are getting really sick in the hospital if they do get a breakthrough infection. It's people that are in that kind of more vulnerable age group or with chronic conditions. So I do think boosters
boosters can make a difference. And think of it this way, Vicki, more people boosting at the appropriate time can create better immunity than just a few people only getting a boost. So that's the way to think about it. And in terms of holidays and what to do in masks, I'll tell you, I think it has to be a household kind of decision. If everyone's fully vaccinated, you should feel comfortable, unless you have somebody who's really severely immunocompromised or really worried and they're concerned about attendees. If you're all vaccinated and you don't have symptoms, you should feel comfortable taking off that mask. You can, if you're in an area where you can crop open a window or have a little more circulation, makes it all the better, but have faith that these vaccines are working. And Vicki, we're going to have to start to shift to where we start accepting that if we're all vaccinated and we have one of these breakthrough infections, that this is not the end of the world and that this is going to start to become what seems more normal in 2022. But we won't have people in the hospital. We won't have people dying and hopefully not suffering from long COVID.
Thank you. I'm glad you said all of those points because I think we need those practical takeaways. We need to know that there is an end in sight, that the vaccines work and that we don't have to wear masks indefinitely. I want to circle back to that pharmacy in Virginia that gave the wrong doses of COVID-19 vaccine, the adult doses, to some children. We're talking about more than 100 kids. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the trust of parents, some of whom are already very skeptical about getting this vaccine for their children?
Vicki, I give out dozens of vaccines a day, and when I had my children vaccinated over the weekend, I had that same thought because we draw up our vaccines and we put them in pre-prepared vials so that we can have everything ready. And I actually stopped and said, which color vial, just like that parent did. I think that advocating and being sure and having these safety checks, asking questions is always a good idea. I don't want it to undermine trust. What I would rather say is it should reinforce that you as a parent are the best advocate for your child. And you should do it for yourself, too, by the way, in medicine, but at least for children's vaccines, have faith that the majority of us are trying to do the right thing. That pharmacy was trying to do a workaround to get the right dose to the child, but they did the wrong process, and that should never happen again. So I don't want parents to think that this is common, and I want everyone to know we do go through a lot of checks and balances, but it crosses my mind, and it's okay to ask, and it's definitely okay to do what that parent did and make sure. In terms of harm, the harm, it's unknown. We haven't studied this, but the harm is likely very low because if anything, they might have been underdosed and they should talk to their pediatrician, take up whether or not you need to get another vaccine series or do anything different. But the overall, very low adverse effects, most likely.
Okay, that's reassuring and always great advice from you, Dr. Patel. Speak up as a parent. Thank you so much.
Time for checking your morning news now. Weather?
All right, Bill Cairns. Hey, good morning. I saw you in Studio 1A yesterday. Had the rollers in, though.
Yeah, every now and then they let me out of my basement. It's like 2 or 3 times a year, and that's about it. Yeah, good morning, guys. So we have a big weather system. It's causing, in some areas of the country, snow, blizzard, windy conditions. And then on the East Coast, we're watching the rain that's going to move through. And it's just the timing of it's not really ideal. Let's show you what it looks like currently in right now at Times Square in the middle of the heart of New York City. We are watching, bands of rain moving through, but right now the really heavy stuff has not hit New York, so the streets look just fine. Don't even see anyone carrying umbrellas at this time. The timing for New York, we'll get into that. So let's get into the storm system and show you the timing and what you can expect if you're heading out the door this morning. I think the airports will have significant travel delays today, not just in the Northeast, but when you start talking about D.C., New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and even Hartford, too, and then another storm system affecting areas in the Midwest like Chicago and Minneapolis, the ripple effect across the country is going to be fairly significant. So Washington, D.C., your rain is almost over. About another hour or so. You could have some gusty winds moving through, but the worst of it is done for you. Philadelphia, the worst of the morning commute is going to be from now till about, let's say, 10 or 11, and then by about noon it begins the weekend. But you could even get some strong storms out of this, some gusty winds. New York City, the timing from about 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. We could see gusts up to 50 miles per hour. So you try to figure heavy rain, wind gusts to 50. All of the New York airports will be a mess. And then this mess will head up towards Boston right around 3 to about 6 p.m. And there's that cold weather that's moving into the Midwest, guys. We'll talk more about the cold and the snow coming up next hour. That's going to be a big theme as we head into the weekend.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.